This is Making It Here and There. Welcome to the show.
Lafi is a creative force who uses art as a means of joy, serenity, education, awareness, and social impact. They are currently the program manager for The Other Side, a cross-cultural exchange of dramatic storytelling among girls and gender-diverse youth. They use their talents in the classroom and they support the nonprofit. When the pandemic began, they founded Keep It on the DL, a virtual mutual aid project connecting students, educators, parents, and caregivers worldwide with valuable resources and links. They're also a freelance artist, digital curator, and instructor. You can find their artwork and resources at www.dotcalm.com, and you can support them at patreon.com/www.dotcalm.
Thank you, Lafi, for coming on, Making It Here and There. We got so much going on. And I just really am excited to talk about all the various projects that you're involved in. So why don't you just tell everybody what initially sparked your interest in what you're doing in terms of art and teaching and just civic participation and non-binary activism and everything going on?
Well, I guess I would say that what's really sparked a lot of my interest today just are things I've always been interested in. My dad used to draw little smiley faces on my fingers, and while the ink was still wet, I would like press it down on the paper and just like that's how I was able to start drawing, because I would draw all around this little face. And actually I paint portraits now, so I guess that's pretty appropriate. But yeah, and I guess it really all starts with my parents and with my family. My family name is Lafi, or in Jersey people call us the Lafi family, and there's a really strong moral compass there. So my family's always really joked about me being like the people's lawyer, like just always kind of thinking about the little guy, or like, don't forget that this person might not feel included, or don't forget this person might be upset by that, or those kinds of feelings really led me towards nonprofit work and using my creativity to further that.
Do you think you'd always go into this work just growing up from your family?
Well, when I was in kindergarten, they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said a vegetarian so that I could take care of animals. So I guess not only was I very confused, but I always wanted to be a million and one things. So I think every year it kind of like switched out to something new, but was always in this realm of like either being really artsy or really helping people. And in college, I finally found both. So.
And what did you study in college?
Well, I did study music and theater, and then from there I started studying women and gender studies as well as nonprofit administration. So I did a bunch of internships at different nonprofits, and eventually that landed me my job at The Other Side.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about The Other Side and what you're doing for education. Can you elaborate on your role?
Yeah, so I serve as a program manager. I started out as a lead teaching artist, which I think went to like a community assistant or communications associate, and then it developed into something else, like a developmental assistant, which turned into a program manager. And I'm really grateful to really like carved out this like growth path there. When I first started, and I was even in my interview, was really excited about the idea of like maybe one day being closer to where Melanie was and where I was at being a teacher. And she seemed really interested in teaching me a lot about her job and how she was able to build it up. And I feel like I've gotten more and more of a voice as it's gone along. So now I manage the programs that we put out, which is a really important role that needed to come up because all of our programs needed to shift once the pandemic happened. Like, we communicated mostly remotely, but our students learned in person. And so this was a huge, huge change.
Now, and just for everybody out there who I hope has been watching the Melanie interviews that I did last season, The Other Side is a cross-cultural exchange through theater and building confidence and leadership. How do you fulfill this mission in your role?
Well, for me, I really want to keep in mind every single person. So whether that's keeping in mind how a teacher would feel, delivering this lesson, or how a student might feel being on Zoom for an hour, or how a student might feel who's having trouble with internet, or just like having trouble at home. So a lot of my work is just thinking about all those little tiny facets of the program and making sure that everyone is really getting the most out of their participation. I just want everyone to feel like they belong.
Yeah, and I feel like that's something that, I know I talked with Melanie, of course, but like it's, there's definitely challenges that I feel like isn't well known. I mean, if you live in the suburb or whatever, you go to school, you're doing your thing, but in especially like urban settings, such as the Bronx, or the rural settings like in India, it's very challenging to meet, like you said, just the basic requirements of just having internet or having enough money to buy the supplies and whatnot. It's crazy.
Yeah, actually, one of the newer programs that we have 3 new programs, or I guess 2 new programs and 1 revamped. But one of our new programs is the Student Resource Fund. So our students are able to apply for, like, I guess you could say, a micro grant. And during that application process, they just kind of tell us more about the dreams that they've uncovered or been able to discuss in class, and we're able to give them like a solid amount of money to achieve that goal. Because I think it's important that we're like literally putting our money where our mouth is, and really able to take some of the donations that we're getting and like putting that back into the community and really serving them and empowering them so that they can stay a part of our program, and that they can keep giving out this message of like empathy and connecting with others. And you can't do that in a dark room, and you can't do that, like crying because you're not able to take the bus to your internship. I've definitely been there. I didn't ask my parents for a single penny when I was in school. And like there were days where I had $3 in my account and like eat chips for dinner, or like had to take a bus to rehearsal, and that was all the money I had left. And I think that when you encourage people to achieve their dreams, you have to remember too that it's not just about believing in yourself. Like it's also like redistributing wealth and really redistributing what we've got. So.
And like you said, and then it's a ripple effect, because this, student is able to at least, like you said, live out, or I say live out, but get to do this passion, whatever it ends up being. You said if it's theater, if it's art, or if it's helping at a nursing home, or whatever it ends up being. It's putting, like you said, it's putting something positive out there, and that might inspire somebody in that circle, and then that person in that circle can inspire somebody else in their family, and then that person, what I mean, like you said, it just kind of ripples out. So that's really sweet. So in addition to that, the fund, what are the other projects that you're specifically working on for the other side?
Well, we have a podcast as well. It's called the Sisterhood Podcast, and maybe Melanie talked about it a little bit. But this podcast is something that has been a staple part of our organization for a while, and she's just gotten a little bit of a technological facelift. Mm-hmm. So, the structure is going to be a little bit different. There's going to be questions based off of our curriculum that the students can choose from to ask each other. Also, like practicing consent, we tell the students, like, pick any questions that you don't want to answer, let us know. Yeah. And we're going to have the conversation facilitated by a new guest every episode, which will just be an inspiring community member that we really look towards, and people that we genuinely do teach them about every day. And the third program is the leadership training program, which I'm really excited about. I really want to spread our curriculum to more than just our classroom. I think that so many people, when I talk to them about our curriculum and I talk to them about what they're doing, they want to be involved too. So this is a way of sharing our curriculum, sharing our activities, and really sharing our teaching techniques as well with not just educators, but also community members and caregivers. So I really wanted to keep them in mind. And, there's plenty of parents, grandparents, and aunts and uncles that really just need ways to have fun and ways to connect with other people, and especially virtually right now. So those are the pretty much all of our programs that are coming up and relaunching.
And that's the keep it on the DL the one you just talked about, or is that something
Well,
different?
Keep It on the DL is actually something that I created on my own. And
Okay.
that was just in response to struggles that people around me were having to distance learning, whether that was my students or friends of mine that were parents or other educators that I knew. So I wanted to create like an online hub where I can share out scholarships, resources, tips, activities, and there's like a growing resource form also that people can add to or take from whenever they need.
And I think that's really nice because I feel like, it's hard enough having like children or taking care of children, whether they're your children or you say you're a caregiver. It's hard to just find things to do to keep kids not just watching TV or being on the computer, or I don't know. I guess the kids these days have iPads, which I feel like is just insane. But I don't know. I didn't have a computer until I was like 12. So, but you know what I mean? Like, it's easy to plop your kid in front of a screen as opposed to, I mean, if you're going to plop them in front of a screen, at least have it be something that's at least somewhat inspiring or educational. It doesn't have to be anything super deep, but just get the creative juices flowing, because that's, you have to have sometimes, you have to entice, I feel like with children, you have to entice some sort of thinking on your own, or at least coming up with ideas on your own. It doesn't have to be necessarily right or wrong or perfect, but I feel like that's where it's difficult with children, because it's just, there's so many influences out there.
Yeah, I think it's hard too for parents, or I mean, it's hard for caregivers, for siblings, for educators to just like find ways to connect with kids and like to play with them. Like it's also hard to figure out how do you even play with kids, because one thing the other side taught me was that imagination is literally a skill. Like it's a muscle that you grow, and that we're very lucky to have that muscle. Not everyone has it. Like some people are really discouraged from that. I mean, we have some activities that I remember some of my students in India like could not even wrap their heads around. Like we do an activity where one person is an employee, the other person is like an assistant, and the assistant has to find like a silly reason why they can't do a task. Like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't get all the papers printed out. There's a bunch of crickets in my apartment and we're having a pizza party and I don't want to miss it. And so like, you just think of something silly and they like couldn't get it. And so Melanie was like, oh, it's like a really big part of their culture to like really respect the people you work for. So this is a game that just like doesn't make sense. And imagination is not like an activity you do at school. So I was like, oh, okay, like I didn't realize that. I thought it was just like a kid thing, but it's learned. So I really try to put things out there that even the parent who like has a hard time sitting there and building Legos can also do. And also keeping in mind people that are disabled as well, who, may have the best wants and desires for their kids, but like just ability wise, it's easier to put an iPad in front of somebody because nothing you're seeing out there is made in a way that you can do that for your kids. So I really just try to keep everyone in mind in that sense, and share out the work that people are putting out there, and not so much like creating that content myself.
And I mean, I feel like you already hit the nail with the kind of the next question I had, but I'm going to ask it anyway, because I feel like there's more. There's more. What other topics are you just super passionate about with the other side, and even keep it on the DL?
Just like I was saying, I guess for me, really noticing how ableism exists and really takes away from our society in so many ways is something I'm really passionate about. I live with chronic pain. I'm in pain every day. I'm like generally at a 7 and just like living. And so like this kind of myth that like disabled people just like they all have to be taken care of by somebody and they like can't do things, and it's just like not true. And I've found more and more that a lot of the disabilities that people have is about the world not being made in any kind of way that like they can access it. So it's more so that like able-bodied people just like have a world that's made for them, and then a lot of other people don't. So I really try my best in the activities that we do to always put little asterisks, like make sure you give other options, right? And like sometimes a student has a disability and doesn't know. I can't tell you how many times as a teacher I've seen a student who like should be evaluated for autism, and their parents just like would not want, they just don't want to accept that. They don't want that to be the truth. And so because of that, you have kids who like just don't have the tools that they need to succeed and to thrive, because they're not being acknowledged as who they are. So as a teacher, I really try to implement that with everybody. Like, not everyone who needs an adjustment is going to ask for it. So it's always good to have other options, or just
be
really
flexible,
alternate routes. Yeah.
It's funny it's interesting you say about, I mean, I just feel like sometimes even things in our world, right, or they say world, like just society, even as like not say even as an able-bodied person, but some things, I was actually just talking about this, about like, remember how in school, like they give you like, you would use like the restroom, or like, there would be a break between classes, like that would be like the only short time you could have to like use the restroom.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you tried to ask to use it during class, like forget it.
Yeah.
But like someone like me, or like, I don't know, who's getting like maybe too TMI, but like that wasn't always like okay. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Like, really, I was just talking to somebody about this. Like, remember how like you only had like a minute to like use the restroom? Like, that's not always enough. And I'm not talking about putting on like makeup, or, I mean, this is like when I was in like Catholic school. Like, it wasn't like, something silly. Like, I don't know. Like,
yeah, actually, that's funny you say that. When I was in, I mean, this was a teacher, I loved her. I still remember her name, Miss Manzella. If you're out there, I love her. She was such a sweetheart, but like she also had a very strict bathroom policy. And I think I really had to go. I was in second grade, and she said, give me a moment after I finish this. And I'm painfully polite. And so she never remembered. And so I just kind of kept quiet and was like, I'm not going to interrupt her. And so eventually I went to the bathroom without going to the bathroom. And later on went to the doctor, and I realized I had bladder issues, like from when I was a really young child, and I didn't realize. And so thankfully, my mom told the teacher and was like, hey, like, this isn't really a great policy to have, because like you never know. And like, we didn't know, but now we know. And there may be other students who have problems, and you're just like gonna put them in a really bad spot.
It's already like a topic like nobody really wants to talk about, but it's like,
it's the little
it's
things.
like basic human like right, like
Totally.
Human function.
Yes, nothing bothers me more than children being seen as like second class in our community, or like not even being acknowledged as part of the community. Because look at this pandemic, where kids have been not even given a choice on whether they're going to school or not. We've talked about whether parents are tired, right? Yeah. But like, have we talked about how exhausting it must be to imagine having to go to work and then not go to work, and then go again and then not go? It's like really exhausting. And I think that it proves they're just as much a part of our community in this conversation as anybody else.
Absolutely. Oh, it's getting good. What has been your biggest challenge in this role with the pandemic? I know there's probably many, but what would you say? Like, yeah.
I would say the number one thing for me actually was, I'm trying to not get emotional, but there was like 1 week where we were going into school, and I remember a lot of my students being like, oh, this sucks. We're going to have a whole week off. And I was like, it's fine. It's going to be a couple days, and we're all going to see each other, and it's not going to be a big deal. And we were actually practicing for our final showcase at that time. And this was like the class of students that I've had so many kids, and I love them all the same, but this class just completely touched my heart. We had some of the most bare bones conversations together and learned so much as a unit. And just like, I might not ever see them again. So I have to say that honestly, that was really my biggest challenge, because I just had to immediately start crafting a curriculum to be virtual and like say hello to new students and just, keep going. And so I think that was really, really hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's got to be even really difficult too. Like you said, you're getting a whole new batch of students and they're all virtual. So do you feel like something was, when did this start, or when did this end and start?
Well, I guess it was almost exactly a year ago now.
Oh, okay.
So this all happened in March, and I would say, like, with my new students, I don't feel like, oh, I can't connect with them as much because it's
Okay.
virtual. I don't personally feel that way. I mean, I'm sure many teachers do, but I don't. I think there are some ways that I can't show up for them anymore, and that's really challenging. Like, that really breaks my heart. Like, I have a memory of my last class when we were in person, and I had a student that she was like acting so tired, and she like had such a brain fog, she couldn't even focus on the task. So I brought her aside and I'm like, what'd you have for breakfast? And she's like, oh my God, I didn't even have anything, I forgot. I'm like, oh my gosh, hold on. So I go to my purse, and I always have like a little granola bar, like a fruit or something for my kids in case that I notice that they're hungry or tired. And like, those are those little things that, like, I can't do that anymore.
Yeah, yeah, you're
That's,
not. And
yeah.
oh,
Yeah. So I miss helping my kiddos in like a more active sense.
yeah. And I mean, what does the future look like? I mean, for the other side, in terms of, is it? I know it's probably, what they call it, just a day by day. But what do you? What are the plans?
Our plans for now are really to just stay remote. I think that now we've mastered how to work virtually, and I think to a point where now we're like, oh, this is literally better. This is actually
Okay.
better, because our students were learning in person. Like, our students in India, let's say they had the class Tuesdays at 3 o'clock.
Mhm.
Our Bronx students might have the class Wednesdays and Fridays at 2. Like, it really depended on the specific school or organization or wherever it was that we were working out of, like an after school program. We would go off of their schedule. So when we held our own classes, we were able to say, like, do you guys want to meet up at like 8 p.m. and like have a movie night and just like do things that we would never have been able to do in a school or like during school hours. So I think that that's our plan for now. And as we have the leadership program, we're starting new sister circles, which will just be, I think they're monthly. I'm sorry, Melanie, if I'm wrong. I think that they're monthly, and all of the teachers, all of the educators that take part in the leadership training program, they can invite their students. So we're going to have like kids from all over the world, all over New York. Really cool.
So speaking of New York, I'm going to pivot a little. I'm going to pivot.
Sure.
We're allowed to pivot. You're doing a lot of stuff. And when you were telling me all the little, like, the things you were doing, I was like, wait, what are you working on? You're like, I'm doing this. I'm like, oh, yeah, this is gonna be like a 6-hour podcast going. No, but it's good. It's good. And I think that's really nice that you are working on so many different. It's all related. Kind of all falls under the same larger umbrella, but it's kind of like this. They kind of all kind of intersect and overlap. But you're working on a research project for about civic participation with people of color. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So I actually was asked to do this by, now she's a really good friend, Loudon. She is a researcher who just graduated from Rutgers, New Brunswick, and she had worked on her own research project discussing with Black, Indigenous, and people of color elders on what got them started in civic participation, what does it mean to them, and like what actually did they do. And my job is being a digital curator, so really putting together the website, organizing everything, and just thinking of the best and most accessible practices for like putting it out there. So whether that's promoting it, having it live in on other websites or in other schools. So that's really my purpose. I guess you could say I'm a creative, maybe it's a new role or something. But when my friend told me about this, she was like, I want your help, and I don't really know how, but I need your help with getting it out there. And so this is kind of what we thought up as, making this a curatorial kind of job.
Now, is this just, I can't remember, and correct me if you told me and I forgot. No, is this just for New York, or was this like nationwide?
I believe that she had collected interviews from people in the tri-state.
Okay.
I think more specifically New Jersey and New York, but she had said tri-state, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. And that's one of those things like you could branch off. I mean, if they really took off, you could do like more and more and more and more and more and more.
These stories are amazing, and I can't wait to share them with you and to share them with the greater world. I feel like, oral history is, I mean, as you know, with this podcast, it's really important. I always tell my students, like, storytelling is so important because you get to build on what people look back on and they see. And so when you look back at history and you're like, this is BS, who the hell wrote this shit? You can make that difference for the right now, right? Like, the more words you put out there and the more the thoughts you share, the more you're part of what people look back on. So, yeah, I hope it grows too.
And you know what's great? You know what? I say what's great. What's great about this project, but what like is, I never read this book, but it was like the lies my teacher told me, or like, you feel like you're in history class and you're in the same history over, every year you learn like the same things. It's like, you learn about like the Egyptians, and then like next thing you know, it was like the Revolutionary War. Like, well, yeah, that's how I feel like when like the Egyptians, like Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, and like it ended out like World War II. It was like always like I feel like every year was like the same.
Yeah.
And you miss and there's so much other history out there that like just gets like lost in the sauce. Like they don't teach you. I don't know who comes up with this curriculum. I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, and I know there's different teachers that are better than others. I'm blanking. I'm just speaking from personal experience, but I'm sure I don't know what other states do, but it's like, like you go on like these like history Instagram accounts, and you're like, why did they tell us about this? I mean, it might even be something not necessarily going to be the best or most interesting thing to me, but I mean, I wish I still knew about it. I mean, like I said, I'm not going to go there and like pull out books from the library to say I'm going to look, but like these little like stories that exist in this world, like, we screwed up like 10 times over. Like, if we had just read that the last time, like, we wouldn't have done it again. That would repeat itself. It's just.
I wish I could clone myself so that I could have a million jobs, because I'm so interested in like a million things. And one of those things is definitely history. And I wish I could be a history teacher, but I teach the whole thing like I'm Wendy Williams, and I'm like in the corner and I'm like, Christopher Columbus, like there's so much juicy details to this.
Don't even get me started, Christopher Columbus. I'm like over it.
I know.
Like I'm over it. Like it's gotta stop.
Like, enough of him.
And I'm gonna tell you, I've been to his house. I went to his like alleged house, which is like,
wow.
Yeah, it's in Genoa. Honestly, the ceiling is like, it's like 5 feet. Like I have to like crouch it again. They're like, everyone there must have been like, and this isn't anything about short people. It's just interesting because you're like, really, like they could have made the ceiling a little bigger. But they say, I don't know how tall he was. Maybe I think he was supposedly short, but I don't know back then too.
Well, I'm 4'11", so if anyone brings him back, I'm fully willing to. Can I say beat his ass? I'm willing to beat his ass.
You could do like celebrity death match.
Yeah.
And you can make even the claymation figurines. I don't know what you call it, but there you go.
That's another thing I'm interested in.
Claymation. Stop motion. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I don't know. I don't want to talk about Christopher Columbus because we're talking about you and how cool you are, and I'm going to talk about him. But we can talk about you like beating him up. That'd be fun. Should do it. Now I lost my train of thought. But I did want to talk about, actually, now we'll segue to all the art you've been doing. So you're working as like a freelance artist. Now, if somebody wants to commission you, what are the types of work that you do for anybody who commissions you?
Well, I mostly work doing portraits. I love, I don't know if I'm like the New Jersey medium, or like if I have to go pre-order my acrylics, but I love I love doing portraits of people who aren't on this earth anymore. I love doing tribute pieces. They're really near and dear to me, and I just feel so like I'll literally be weeping like painting these, because I just feel like I could just feel, like I just feel that person that I'm painting, and I just feel very in tune with like why the painting is being made, and there's just like a lot of feeling in it. Actually, I have a portrait piece here that I painted of my mentor who passed in the past year, and he was really instrumental to me being being aware of many hats, I guess you could say. And so I mostly do these kind of portraits. It's like sort of line style. Let me see if I can get it out of the light.
Yeah, because you have like a plastic on it. Yeah.
Get it out of there. Oh, there we go.
It's like and it's weird because it's like the detail is there, but yet it's like you did the thing. I don't know. You did like the impression. You can see the detail close up, but far away it looks. Yeah.
Yeah, I try to work, I guess, like realistically, but also maintaining like my creativity and really attaining my style, which is really based on like really delicate lines and just building on those lines. And because of that, I really love working on clothing. So I am working on some commissions right now of like some jackets and just like applying someone's really cool design onto jackets and hand painting them. I never thought I could say this, but my commissions are actually closed right now. I know. But I'm hopefully going to be opening them back up in the summer. For now, I'm pretty booked up, which is like such a blessing. I'm so grateful that it got to this point because I guess I just never really thought I could get here. I think a lot of artists feel that way when they start. It's really hard to start having clients. It's really hard to believe in yourself enough to ask for what you're worth. Like, especially being a person of color, being a non-binary person, there's just like a lot of reasons why someone like me would really like sell themselves short. So I've thankfully had a lot of good mentors along the way to really be like, oh, no. You know, really value yourself. So yeah, just staying on that really.
Going back to about the portraits of a deceased person or people, I'm just trying to think of the question because I didn't put this in my little questionnaire, but like how do you channel that energy into the piece that you're doing? And then what pieces do you use for it? Do you just use photographs? Do you use descriptions from the person who's commissioning you, or how does that work, or both?
Well, I always ask the person to send me, if they have a main photo, send me that photo. It's good to send other references because you can get a really nice feel for personality. So let's say if I was working on a portrait of my grandfather and I know him to be such a little sweetheart and he looks so serious in this picture. So I just added like the tiniest bit of a lift. So as to not really be a smile, but like a Mona Lisa smile. Yeah. These kinds of like small details are really important on like really giving it the life that person is looking for. I really try to think about what it is that prompted that person to commission this portrait. So like this portrait I just showed you, for example, I made this because I was thinking about completing my last year at school, and I had such a breakdown thinking about how I would never see him in his office again. And so painting something that I could put in his office and that like so many people who loved him so much still can like have that, like going to his office. So just like thinking of those things, like what's the purpose? Like what is this supposed to make you feel or the person watching feel? And I love to hear about people's personalities, but I feel like no matter how little or how much information a person gave me, I can totally feel it. Like I've painted portraits before where I can hear someone's grandma being like, if you don't hurry up, I'm like, okay. Everyone has a really strong personality, and I think that, you know, really staring at someone's face and maybe even looking at someone for as long as they've been looked at by people who love them with all their heart, like you really learn. You see the little freckle on their cheek that they, you know, share with their daughter, or a little frown line that tells you, you know, that they were a pensive thinker. So just paying attention to little things.
And what would you say the most important takeaway is from your art?
I guess for me, in everything that I do is just to slow down enough to pay attention. I really want people to feel calm. I really want people to feel calm. I think there's so much in this life that causes stress. I think there's so much in this life that is just like, feels like just never ending grief, honestly. So if I can make something that can immortalize someone, you know, so that your grandpa's always in your living room, or I can paint your favorite inspiration and turn it into a whole coloring book, and that's what, you know, you go to at the end of the day when you're stressed. Like I guess it's like permanence and relief.
And is there any other like art that you said you were working on the clothing? Was there any other types of art that you work on, or actually, you know what, is there any interesting work that or artwork that you want to do that you haven't quite done yet? I know there's probably like a lot.
Well, I really love curating. So I curated my first art show when I was like 17, and I did that in Jersey. And then I was lucky enough to, I entered a contest for the Living Gallery in Brooklyn, and I was able to curate a 3-day show there, which was like such a, and so I guess like my ultimate dream would be to curate a show where it's just me, which like, that sounds really crazy. I love like giving other people the microphone, you know? So I guess I would be kind of vulnerable, but I would love to create a show that's all about my family, and create a specific art piece based off of like that one person in my family. I create a lot of art about them, and they just like, I mean, their name is my name. I changed my name to my family name, Lafi. I really carry them with me everywhere I go. So I would really love to share that one day.
And I feel like that brings it full circle, because you said that's where you started from. I mean, literally, but biologically, but like,
yeah.
you know, but that's who you said that started it all was your family, and your, like you said, your father drawing the smiley face on your on your finger.
Yeah, it really does. My family, I think that for me, my family has just taught me so much about life, so much about letting go, so much about like how relationships don't have to be perfect to be really beautiful. I mean, being a queer person, growing up in my family is a very, very Christian family. I mean, I can point out anyone in my family and be like, youth pastor, elder, deacon, you know, like everyone's something in the church, or like studies Hebrew and theology at school. Shout out to Nicole and Sam. Hey. And I guess I can be sort of a black sheep, but in my own way, like I still feel like I find heaven in them. Mm-hmm. So I just have my own spirituality and my own view of the same thing, and that taught me a lot. Like there were a lot of days where you're stressed and you want to talk to someone and they're like, pray about it, and that's really frustrating and annoying. But when I started in my head like thinking about it more from what would comfort me, like I guess really what they were saying is like just think about it, you know, spend your time and just think about it and really put it out there. Like I can take that in. Right. So like I just kind of had to morph the words they were saying into something that I can hold on to a little better, not let them like slip out of my hands because it didn't feel like it was for me. So I really love them a lot.
That's it's like it's nice. I think like that's really, like you said, it's nobody's family is perfect. I mean, but we all came, I mean, for better or for worse, we all came from somewhere. So, and those experiences have shaped us, but doesn't mean that it has to define us necessarily.
Okay.
And I think that's, you know, that's I feel like the lesson I feel like as a society we're learning, but we're getting there. It's still taking some time, but we're getting there. But we definitely, society needs more people like you who are just, you're very nurturing. You're trying to bring out the best of everybody, and trying to create that nice little ripple of joy and, like you said, calm. So just can you just let everybody know what you know, ways to find you, ways to find your art? I know you're not taking commissions, but you know, you have it that you want to promote or talk about?
Well, I have a tongue twister of a website if you can follow. It's www.www.dotcalm.com. So I can be reached through there. I also have my Instagram, which is also www.com. And sorry, that's just the beautiful sounds of the Bronx. Like loud noises. Like if you're looking for me, just shout in the Bronx, you'll find me.
That out a window.
Yeah. But you can support me through my Patreon, which again is w.com. And I'm in the process of, I guess, like we were saying earlier, just like revamping, rebranding, and really thinking about how I can be even more vulnerable with what I'm putting out there. I've gotten a lot of feedback from people that it would be helpful if I made videos and that like it would make things more accessible. I did go to school for like to be a theater major, but that doesn't mean I'm not shy. So I'm really just trying to to like understand that, you know, that is what my community wants from me, and it is I suppose that like people like to speak with me, so I want to put that out there more. So I guess just keep your eyes peeled for what I have coming up, and hopefully making a lot more interactive content.
Awesome. Well, you got to share these videos with me so I can share them.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
With my circle. And just thank you so much. And like, I can't wait to see what you got coming out.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciated talking with you in this interview. And just, you know, I was really surprised about all the feelings I felt going through these questions. So really thanks a lot for that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in. If you are interested in being interviewed for Making It Here and There, please send an email to MIHATpodcast@gmail.com. Making It Here and There is an interview series focusing on ways in which individuals are using communication across borders and across cultures to achieve understanding, learning, and overall consciousness of the world around us.